Daybreak on Biz News is proudly brought to you by Bonitas, the medical aid for South Africa.
Good morning and welcome to the Biz News Daybreak. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of June. I'm Kerry Lanigan. Up first, let's get the latest overnight world news from our partners at Bloomberg.
We're learning more about the Memorandum of Understanding between the U.S. and Iran. As part of this agreement, Iran is set to receive broad financial incentives. That includes the right to sell oil immediately, and Iran will also be able to tap a $300 billion development fund and get eventual access to its frozen assets. Bloomberg's Nick Wadham says the tentative deal would also require Israel to withdraw from Lebanon, a condition Israel has already rejected.
Of course, the issue there is that the U.S. isn't at war in Lebanon. It's Israel that's going after Hezbollah across its northern border, but Israel is not a part of the U.S.-Iran agreement. So a lot of that will really hinge on President Trump's ability to get Benjamin Netanyahu to do what he wants.
That is Bloomberg's Nick Wadham's team leader for national security coverage. Meantime, President Trump has expressed frustration with Israel's military campaign in Lebanon. Here is former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren.
We're dealing with enemies that on purpose hide among the civilian population. They use them as shields. If civilians are hurt, and that is a tragedy, certainly. The president would be well advised to address his comments to Hezbollah and tell Hezbollah to stop shooting at the northern part of this country and rendering it uninhabitable. If we don't defend the north, we basically lost this country.
Today, shares in SpaceX picked up nearly 4.8%. That's after rallying in the previous two sessions. Shares are up 49% since making their debut last Friday. And SpaceX has now overtaken Amazon in value with market capitalization of $2.65 trillion. Here's Sean McGuire, partner at Sequoia Capital.
We're in a generational transition of cloud from kind of legacy CPU-based jobs to AI cloud. I strongly believe that SpaceX AI is the best in the world at building this next generation of AI clouds. Like, not even close. An order of magnitude better at building terrestrial compute in this AI era than anyone else.
That is Sean McGuire, partner at Sequoia Capital. Separately, SpaceX has formally agreed to buy the AI code-writing startup Cursor. Cursor will receive $60 billion in SpaceX stock. Now, SpaceX says it has worked for the past few months with Cursor to jointly train a model that will be released soon by both companies' AI agents. Anthropic has held virtual meetings with U.S. officials after being ordered last week not to give its most advanced AI models to foreign nationals without government permission. A letter from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick threatened Anthropic with criminal and civil penalties if the firm failed to get a government license. More from Bloomberg's Amy Morris in Washington.
The letter, dated Friday, ordered Anthropic not to give its Fable 5 and Mythos 5 artificial intelligence models to foreign nationals anywhere in the world without a license from the Commerce Department. Lutnick gave no basis for why the restrictions were necessary. Anthropic has disabled all access to the two models and has held virtual meetings with U.S. officials about specific security issues after receiving the directive. Anthropic is now in talks with the Trump administration to find a solution.
The National Tertiary Education Union has filed a criminal complaint against the University of Fort Hare's Vice-Chancellor. Grant Abbott takes Chris Steyn through the evidence. The full interview is on biznews.com.
Firstly, just to start off with, as we know, the matter with regards to Fort Hare has been a long-standing one. We've spoken to you and been on your show a few times, just expressing the concerns. But to give you an idea, essentially, what we've done is filed a criminal complaint against the Vice-Chancellor for irregular appointments, for making appointments contrary to what the policy of the institution is. And these go, and then giving people golden handshakes that go into the millions and millions of rands. We're not talking just small change here. And the reality is that is taxpayers' money. It's not his own money. It's not his own company, and that is what is quite key in terms of this. So the criminal complaint outlines quite significantly the evidence that we have gathered and has come to our attention over the last 2 to 3 years, and it now lays it out and says that the Vice-Chancellor is not just someone behind the scenes. He is very actively involved on the face of what we see this evidence says. So we are talking about effectively HR corruption.
Well, this is a man who styled himself as an anti-corruption fighter.
Yeah, he did, and it could well be that he came in originally with very good intentions. The problem is that you can't position yourself as a corruption buster and then in the process of doing that, create more corruption. And that's exactly what he has done. There may be, for example, legitimate things that he did get right. But on the face of the evidence that we've presented to law enforcement, we think it is he's done more harm than good.
50 years on from the Soweto uprising, political commentator Solly Moeng speaks about Ramaphosa, the ANC, and what this generation of young South Africans has actually inherited. Watch the full interview with Chris Steyn on biznews.com.
It's just buying time, really, kicking the ball further down the road. Ramaphosa is not going to be president of the ANC following its next elective conference in 2027. But he is buying time for himself, definitely for other people around him whose interests would not be aided by him leaving now and a certain Paul Mashatile is immediately coming in, because that's the only other alternative. I don't see anybody else coming in if Ramaphosa were to leave tomorrow. So I think he's going to buy time to as far as he can. But he's really chasing many ghosts here. I think there obviously public confidence in government, in the ANC-led government, is very, very, very low, if any exists at all. And in Ramaphosa as well, who came in as the last hope for South Africa, but you've seen him over the years, taking time to make decisions, not making decisions, protecting, his comrades who were wrong. I mean, we've spoken about this before. There are still people in the system, in parliament, representing the ANC who should not be there at all. So he really just acts when he thinks he'll, just temper the anger of the South Africans, or when they're looking the other way, he keeps doing things the way he wants, or his party wants him to do it, to do them. So I think there's no confidence in Ramaphosa in the ANC. South Africans want change, but technically, legally, they will hold on until the very last moment.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
To markets now. Fitch upgraded Eskom's credit rating this week, but the BizNews Daily Edge unpacks what's really behind it.
Fitch lifted Eskom's long-term issuer default rating to B+ from B, and the outlook is stable. Senior unsecured debt is also to B+, recovery rating unchanged at RR4. And the guaranteed senior unsecured debt moved to BB from BB-. For note holders, and remember, Eskom has no listed equity here, only debt under the alpha code BIESKM. This is unambiguously good. Cheaper funding means better access. But here's what the headline won't tell you, and this is what we cover here on BizNews Edge, is that this upgrade is not about Eskom getting its house in order, it's about Pretoria. Fitch upgraded South Africa's sovereign rating on the 5th of June, and Eskom rode in behind it, pinned by Fitch's own methodology, exactly 2 notches below the sovereign. When the country goes up, Eskom goes up, a coattails rating. And on its own 2 feet, the standalone credit profile is CCC+, deep sub-investment grade. The utility carries an ESG score of just 4 for governance tied to breaches that hit its capital markets access, and another 4 for financial transparency, because it has now booked qualified audit opinions 4 years running. So the ratings go up, the audits stay qualified, and that tells you where the credit really sits versus where the sovereign is dragging it. But what does it reveal about the sector? Well, that the health of every major state-owned enterprise in this country is now welded to the national balance sheet. Eskom can't out-earn its governance problems, it can only be carried by a stronger treasury. My take, bondholders will take the win. On a debt pile this size, easier funding costs are real money saved. But don't mistake a sovereign-driven upgrade for a turnaround. The CCC+ is the truth. The B+ is borrowed credibility.
And finally, back to Bloomberg. Trump says the Strait of Hormuz reopens by Friday. Europe isn't convinced. Oliver Crook reports from the G7 in Evian.
For more, we find our chief Europe correspondent Oliver Crook in a field in France. He's in Evian, where the G7 is being held. Ollie, what concerns do the allies have?
Yeah, it's hard to know really where to begin. You know, this G7 meeting is sort of being sort of backdropped by a bit of optimism, this sort of relief rally, the sigh of relief that there is some kind of arrangement with Iran, that there seems to be a sort of cessation of hostilities. And that was really the feeling, you know, last night, welcoming Donald Trump, welcoming the G7 leaders, having that big dinner here in Evian, France. But today, I think the bigger questions and the harder questions start to be asked, particularly the President of the United States. And you heard the President there speaking alongside Emmanuel Macron, really the sense that he's not just trying to explain the deal to the world, but kind of sell the deal to the world, to say that this is really the deal that the world wants, that this is the deal that the United States wants, and that this is a final deal. A lot of skepticism, I think, on the European side on a number of different points. First, on the Strait of Hormuz, the question of whether or not it will actually be fully reopened by Friday. I suspect, you ask most of the diplomats, you ask most of the leaders here, they don't necessarily think that that is a realistic timeline. There's a real question about the sort of structure going forward, the financial incentives, the sanction relief. Remember, the Europeans are also a part of the sort of sanction regime against the Iranians. The Europeans have said that they're willing to withdraw some of the sanctions, but again, they need a very clear understanding of what the incentive structure is here for Iran, and also the question of what leverage is there going forward on the Iranians, and the question of the toll on the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians say it's going to be toll-free just for 60 days. That obviously is not an arrangement that the rest of the world will be particularly happy with, but of course, the sort of bar for restarting the war and actually being able to exert that maximum amount of leverage, that maximum amount of pressure from the United States is extremely high, just given the difficulties we've had in the global economy, to say nothing of the fact, Lizzie, that you've already got some leaders like Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, saying that they will only sort of join in the sort of demining efforts and the other sort of efforts the Europeans might play a part in if you get a full end to the war, including with Lebanon. So a lot of questions here open for the President of the United States, and you can expect that to be the main topic of conversation today, but probably for the next 2 days.
And of course, for all these European leaders, the war that's on their doorstep is in Ukraine. What's the path forward there at the G7?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as you know, President Zelensky will be arriving here. He'll be holding some meetings with a number of different leaders. And, of course, a big session this morning. It's going to be the big session about 9 a.m. It'll kick off here in local time, the Ukraine session. And that'll be joined by, obviously, all of the attendees here at the G7. And, of course, for Volodymyr Zelensky, it's an opportunity to re-engage the United States. You'll remember that the United States and the sort of diplomatic efforts to end the war with peace, a war that President Trump said he would end in 24 hours when he was campaigning to be president, really basically the United States entirely withdrew, and they've been completely distracted by this war in Iran. But potentially with the end of the war with Iran, you have an opportunity to re-engage the Americans, and that's exactly what President Trump suggested he might do last night. Have a listen to what the president had to say.
Now that this is finished, we're going to be focusing on that, see if we can get that one done. 25,000 people a month are dying, mostly soldiers, and that shouldn't happen. But
So you heard it there from Trump, an opportunity to now refocus on the war in Ukraine. And I think for Volodymyr Zelensky, it's really a question of starting the sort of next chapter of American engagement. Can he start it on the right foot with President Trump? That will be his main aim, and that will, of course, be the aim of many of the European leaders here as well.
That's it for today's Biz News Daybreak. I'm Carrie Lanigan. Thanks for listening.
Daybreak on Biz News is proudly brought to you by Bonitas, the medical aid for South Africa. In uncertain times, good information is priceless. The Biz News Conference is heading back to the Drakensberg. Join me, Alec Hogg, from the 11th to the 14th of August for BNC 9, Champagne Sports Resort, where it all began, and where our community gathers for honest conversations, smart investing insights, and direct access to some of South Africa's sharpest minds. Come and rub shoulders with the best we've got. 28 keynote speakers, 3 days. Seats are available now. Book your seat by clicking the link in the description.